You are watching and listening to Bishop Brothers, a safe space where real issues being dealt with by real people are brought forth and discussed. Every week, the fire of love is lit as two 21st century bishops share the first century church message. Join and engage in the conversation, featuring grassroots interviews, book reviews, and God-inspired commentary. Here are your hosts, Aaron and John, Bishop and Bishop, Chief and Chief. But above all, they are brothers. Welcome aboard.
All right, well, welcome back.
What's going on, bro?
How you doing?
Man, good. I got the restream going, but it's separated. That's good. That'll work.
That's right. Yeah, it turns out if you put a little money and effort into stuff, it'll work.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Technology is it's good and kind of for the glory of God. And that's the main thing. That's right. That's the important thing. Yeah, man. It's just a lot going on, and I just thank God for our discussion last week. We looked for the theological aspect of this situation with Ukraine and how people are using it to conjure up end time fear and things like that. I seen a post today that said and the guy basically guaranteed that the end times are going to happen in your lifetime. Really? Lifetime.
You know, that's so played out. You know how many times people have said that?
Yeah. Nobody wants to die, I always say nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to go through anything. Nobody wants to deal with anything. And everybody knows the mind of God. I always say, if you know the mind of God, then I don't serve that God.
That's right. That's right.
Knows the mind of God. Jesus himself said, no man knows the hour. And so I think we had a good discussion on that, and we had a conversation last week, and I just wanted to just get into the practical life, the practical everyday living of this situation with Ukraine and what's happening. The reason, and I know many people know, the reason why we moved the program from last Tuesday to Thursday, so we can get a chance to, want to make sure we got the pulse, so we can get a chance to look at it and look at the State of the Union and watch what's going to happen with that, and see how the president and the Congress is going to respond to that, and to say, and I want to center what I'm going to have to say on a few things. One, all I care about, I love, is humanity. Humanity, not white, black, not purple, yellow, brown, green, whatever. I care about humanity, and I care about the living earth, and I care about the future of our children, and the world that they're going to live in. So I want to center it on that. So we need to understand, as leaders in the church, as people that's called of God, our number one duty should always be, how does this affect the world? How does it affect human beings? What is this all about? What is happening here? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to react in this moment? And unfortunately, I've had to watch this situation, and it's just an utter failure to me. Again, we're walking down the same road we've always walked down in this country, taking a situation and using it for purposes that may sound humane, that might sound good for the people, but in the end, it's based on politics, it's based on racism, it's based on colorism, it's based on economics, it's based on capitalism, it's based on everything but humanity. And it was frustrating to sit there and watch the president go up there and conduct himself the way he did. I watched so many people for 4 years when Trump was office, they was really, they could easily bring the knives out and easily say this, and he's crafty, he's this, and he might have been all of that.
Yeah.
But he was all that. But the point of the matter, again, is I center what I'm about to say. I care about humanity. I don't care about parties and who's winning office and who's out there, because miss me with it matters. Because we sitting there watching the speech, and that is one of the most white supremacist speeches that I watch them all. I've been watching them since I've come of age, and it's something we did growing up. Watch what the president say once a year. Um, that was one of the most white supremacist speeches that I've ever seen. In the fact that I want to qualify that when I say white supremacists, I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about an ideology, because I've proven, I've shown people the last few weeks that white supremacy is not based on the color of your skin. It's based on the target of your mind. And what I watch is I've seen the mind targeted. Here's what the target is always the mind. I think that's one thing we talk about on this show all the time. The target is always the mind. When you shooting at a target, you're aiming at something. You're aiming at center mass. When you're dealing with these ideologies, when you're dealing with these situations like this, the target is always the mind. I watch a president who's failing in the polls. I'm looking at the optics of it. I'm looking at people with no mask on. COVID is over. Basically you pull the Trump, abracadabra, COVID is gone, it's over with. We're not wearing masks. We're going to come up here in this place and we're going to be big, bad, bold America. And I see this almost sexual, orgasmic fetish for war. It's almost the giddiness of it. We're proud, Biden particularly, failing polls, that. I'm proud to be able to have something now that I probably a few days ago I would have came in as a weak, but now I can be a strong president. I can unify the country because Ukraine is under attack. Ukraine has been taken over by Russia, and Ukraine is going through this and going through that. And I've seen the president taking the tragedy of this human event, this historical human event, and using it as a political football to bolster some fake national unity. We don't want to talk about COVID because that brings your poll numbers down. That's about mask and unmasked and who's vaccinated. So I'm going to leave the first thing. All I'm going to talk about is Ukraine, how people are suffering, and people are doing this and doing that and doing this. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, so we have 1 million people in this country almost dead for COVID, and this thing has just started in Russia. And the first thing you talked about is, you're going to strip the mask off. I'm not going to wear a mask because we're done with that. But almost 1 million people are dead. But the first thing you're going to talk about that, I'm looking at a place that, I'm looking as a black man. I'm looking at what they're saying about Russia. And I'm thinking, Russia is treating the Ukrainians like African Americans and black people have been treated in this country for 400 years. No concern about them. They don't care. They don't care what happened. We're just gonna get what we want to take over the country. We're gonna do what we want to do. But here, what Biden didn't do with his speech, he didn't ask the Ukrainians to do what this country have asked black people to do for 400 years. Pull your own self up by your bootstraps. We're not gonna give you reparations for slavery. We're not gonna give you nothing. We're not gonna give you anything. Pull your own. No, let's go cut a $3.4 million check now, and that's just the start. More money is coming, and so I'm watching this, and then the next breath, people want to tell me, well, we live in a colorblind world. No, what turned my stomach over is white lives different? Does white lives have more value? Because you're not making a speech about what happened in Gaza, Palestine every day. You're not making the people that are losing their homes, civilians being trained. You didn't say nothing. You didn't say one word about the Africans who's trying to get out of Ukraine, getting stopped at the border. You didn't say one word about the 2-month-old baby out there in almost 0 degrees, freezing cold, with warm trains and warm buildings there. But because she's got brown skin, dark skin, she couldn't get to the train. You didn't say nothing about that. So, I'm looking at a situation where why is it different? Why does these victims of war get treated different than the other victims of war? Now turn to the media. Media, the target is the mind. I watch this media, this American press. I watch this American press just inundate the American people. Just inundate. The target is always the mind. See, you need to feel sorry for people that have said the quiet part the quiet things out loud. This is different. These are Africans now. These aren't black people now. These are white people now. These are civilized people that these are Europeans. We don't do this European. The same Europe that had 100-year war. What are you talking about? They don't fight in Europe. See, you can't target my mind because I understand history. I understand the history of Europe. Europe is not a bastion of peace in its history. It's not. And so, but that's the message, because we got to inundate, and make sure we target the mind, make sure we get the people on board this war. As a military man, I'm upset about it, because then I'm saying, okay, now who's going to die for this? Rich man war, rich, and then poor people are going to die for this. And so, when I came into last week, as we talked about the theological of this, America, we have no moral authority at all. And what you didn't say, what really frustrated me about what he didn't say the N-word. Nope, not that N-word. The nuclear. Just be upfront with the American people. You know why this is different. But most American people don't understand, because you don't want to. It's the reason why we're dealing with this situation differently. One reason, besides our other issues, this is a nuclear situation. I've seen all these John Waynes, Bishop. I've seen all these John Waynes. Oh, go out here and do a no-fly zone. You don't know what you're saying.
You don't know what you're asking for.
These are nuclear. This is mutually assured destruction. You're not talking about people with pipe bombs and on the Gaza Strip throwing a pipe bomb and throwing a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a different situation, and he went on with the American people and said that. So, I look at the church. The church is on the side of, they're selling fear. As we talked last week, they're selling this fear mongering. The end is near, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Get ready, so they can get people running back to church to fill their coffers, because they know they're lying. Because they had, you showed us last week how this one man, for 40 years, he's been lying to folks, and his church is full. So as I said, I think on Facebook, does the truth really even matter in the church? That's what inspired me to say. The truth doesn't even matter, because you showed us last week 40 years. 4 years. Like, think of the children of Israel in the wilderness. 40 years you've been lying. Right. Based on, not because you feel bad for them, or you got some answer. You showed us evidence. But then that you think, that's my point. You think that truth matters? They're gonna follow Copeland. The truth. So miss me with your colorblindness. Miss me with, Bishop, and people say, no, they don't. We love our lives.
That's right.
I think we sleep on our. We just love it, because we showed you last week. These people are gonna sell this fear because they know that because you live in fear, and so that was one of the most disgraceful performances that I've ever seen from an American president. And it's just, and I'll let you, as a person who served, as a person who, have seen people die, and you've seen it too, for this country, it's just disgraceful conduct to use war in this situation, to bolster your wag the dog, your mediocre performance in a year. You've done nothing. COVID is gone. So what does America do? It goes where we know is best. Let's fight.
That's right. Now, the first thing I'll say is, as Bishop Brothers, we warned you. Remember when Trump was in office and we were jumping all over him? Mm-hmm. And, some of y'all came with if it was a Democrat president, y'all wouldn't treat him like that. Well, tonight's the night. Normally we don't we don't usually kind of run into the political until it starts to mix with the theological. And that's where we are tonight. There are theological implications to what the President of the United States said. There are theological and historical implications. So we warned you, those of you who sit on the Democrat side, we warned you that we're not Republicans, we're not Democrats. Mm-hmm. We are citizens of the kingdom of heaven who live in the United States, who serve this country. And we have a duty to speak truth, regardless of who sits on the throne in this country, because we know who sits on the throne
Right.
in our lives and in our practice. So we have someone we have to answer to, and it ain't Joe Biden, and it ain't Donald Trump. So here's some of my thoughts of kind of what I saw, and a lot of it, I certainly agree with, some polls said 80% of people liked it.
Yeah,
Well, that to me, that's very telling because of what was talked about. Now, one, we decided we weren't going to wear masks anymore. I'll tell you, and I'll be the first one to admit, it's annoying to wear masks. I don't like wearing masks, but I wear it, right? And if I'd have known that, starting a war in Europe was going to be what got me out of the mask, we could have done a petty war or some false flag operation and been out of masks months ago. So, this whole attitude of COVID. You know what else he didn't mention about COVID? We're still not at 70%. Remember last year? 70% by July 4th, so we can have a normal July 4th. We're almost a year out, and we're in the 60 percentile. We're not even at 70% yet. And that was supposed to be, if I remember right, that was supposed to be the marker. That was supposed to be the moment when the Biden administration said we would start to relax. We are still not there yet. But, we keep falling for this, well, the cases are down, so we're going to bring our guard down. That's a very dangerous thing to do, but clearly the government doesn't care about that anymore. They cared about it when it was popular and it was getting votes and it was getting concern and excuse me, and they, folks had to answer the mail on it. Well, now we've got this Ukraine issue, and just like that, COVID ended overnight. By the way, let me talk about some other things that have occurred. In the last 3 months, there have been 2 school shootings where teenagers have died. Do you remember about 3 years ago when Trump was in office, if we're all being honest? Do you remember when, Stoneman Douglas happened and, the shooting at the church? Remember when all that happened? And that was the news. It's because that was the thing that was going to get votes. Well, now they have the office, so they don't need the votes anymore. So now it's a tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 news story. No one cares anymore. The media doesn't care anymore, right? And we're focused on Ukraine. Now, let me say this about Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine is horrific, and it's wrong. And I'm not even saying we shouldn't help them, but here we go with some theological and moral implications, or maybe some things that hopefully our nation can learn from by seeing what happens with Ukraine. Okay? What we're seeing is a disparity. And we've just got to own that. And guess what? Democrats can't blame Trump on this one. The last year he was in office, all I heard about was racist. And I'm not arguing that, but what I am saying, though, is Biden's been in office over a year. What's changed? Nothing. It's just we got a different emergency. Now it's a war. Right? And instead of looking at Ukraine introspectively and going, wow, you see how we're dealing with Ukraine? That's not how we handled Rwanda. That's not how we handled Somalia. It's not how we handled Iraq. It's not how we handled Afghanistan. We're handling it different. Why? I think that's a fair question to ask. And that's a question that we got to answer the mail. As theologians, as those who are supposedly the moral compass of this world and this country, we're supposed to have our fingers on the pulse of morality, philosophy, theology, God. That's where the church is supposed to be. But instead, we're way more worried about telling people they need to repent of their repentance, which is absolutely absurd. Tim Keller. Yeah, I said it. That's where we are. Instead of actually speaking into the Ukraine issue, everybody's dead silent. Just like all the churches were dead silent during COVID, just like they were dead silent during George Floyd. Here's my point, and I'll give it back over to you. It doesn't matter who is in office. There is a systemic structure that is in stasis, and there's a status quo. We can sit here and we can pretend that if Trump was in office, this would have happened, or if Biden was in office, this would have happened. Well, they were both in office, and nothing happened. Nothing's changed. So, miss me with your whole, the Democrats are going to come save the world, the Republicans are going to come save the world. No one's coming for us. And as citizens of the kingdom of heaven and purveyors of morality that we claim to have, instead, it's like a horror story in Christianity. Every week I open the Twitter sphere, and it's, a 20-year-old pastor that's been dating a 14-year-old for 4 years. That instead we're doing that. That's what we're doing. Instead of actually speaking life into real issues. Ukraine is a very, very real issue. We have never... I would argue that the Cuban Missile Crisis is the only thing closer we've ever gotten to a nuclear exchange in what's going on right now. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this could be some serious trouble. It could be, right? I don't think it's the end of the world as proclaimed in the Bible, but this is a very real situation. And instead of being honest with the American public and going, look, they've got nuclear weapons, we have nuclear weapons. If we do a no-fly zone, there could be a nuclear exchange. If we go into Ukraine, there could be a nuclear exchange. If they cross the border into Poland, that could start a nuclear exchange. But the false flags, the gaslighting, how is it any different from what the Republicans did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? How's it any different? It's not different. And that's where we as Christians, as ministers of the gospel, go, the Republican Party has failed you, the Democratic Party has failed you, the system has failed you, but I know a God who will not fail you. Who's speaking out about that? Nobody. It's crickets. It's crickets. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, what's going on in Ukraine is terrible. And I'm very impressed with their resistance against Russia. Let's be real, this war should have been over a week ago. But they're holding on. So I'm not saying what's going on isn't important or that Ukrainians aren't brave, but we as a country have to be introspective and go, we did something different with this one than we did in the past. What is it? Why is it? Let's learn from it and move on. But we still don't even want to talk about the real reasons for the Civil War. So there's that. Right? We're still 200 years behind. We're not ready to talk about Ukraine yet.
Don't forget, we're the ones that have used nuclear war and war, with Japan.
That's right.
And so, we and then we talk about Ukrainian people. Yes, the Ukrainian people are bad, but that's to the point. Look how the world has rallied around with these sanctions. Company after company after company, Disney, Amazon, Shell, all company after company, Ford have sanctioned. They've isolated Russia. They've cut Russia. The goal is to cut Russia. Nations, Japan, all these nations are saying they're going to cut. So the Ukrainian people are not doing this alone. That's the point. They're doing this with worldwide support. If we're going to stand on morality, which we're supposed to stand on morality, and you say that this is an emergency and this is people are suffering and people are dying, and then you say, okay, we're going to give this much money to Ukraine, yet Africans can't get out of the country, and then you become black people come to you say, well, you know what, pay us for reparations, and then you say you got to go study. You can't come back and say that white life is not different than black life, or white war is not different from black war, because there is a difference and distinction in how you conduct yourself. I go back to what James Baldwin always says: I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. Mm-hmm. You can tell me one thing, we're colorblind, we don't care. And you do. No, you don't. I can see on the TV that the people can't get out the country. I can see that you never have paid for slavery. And then you say, where there's no difference. Yes, it is. You're showing by your actions that there's a difference. And your message is, COVID is over. We don't care. This is a situation These are, but to me, these are white people now. We're us out. This doesn't happen here in Europe. This is different than these other places. We're going to erase it, and we're going to try to trick you to believing that you should ask a question about what the country is doing because you should be focused on the death and dying of having Ukraine. But we had it right here in this country. You want to get real close with Katrina. We call people in our own countries refugees when they were trying to get out of New Orleans for Katrina that came. So we've seen this movie before, and people that might have been targeted take it over. You can't trick us with this stuff, but then you can because I'm looking, I'm looking, and we got all this stuff going on. And he sat up there and said, "Oh, defund the police, defund the police." And as a person who studies criminal justice, who teaches criminal justice, who got a master's in let me tell you something. The police don't protect you. The police show up when something happens. The police are not designed to protect you. The police was founded in slave patrols. But the greater point of this, fund the police doesn't mean you don't need defund the police doesn't mean you don't need police. Defund the police means use resources for areas different that don't put all your resources that we have in police that we do now because we put too much money in police. And so, I'm looking at thing. You're saying defund the police, and then the other day they celebrated the 57th year anniversary of Bloody Sunday, Selma, Alabama. John Lewis got beat up, and people are excited about going and walking across the bridge. Okay, but let's talk about Bloody Sunday. Who beat John Lewis and them up? The police. The Klan didn't beat him up. A mob didn't beat him up. This one Tulsa. Right. The police beat them up. The police. Look at the black and white thing. The police beat John Lewis almost to death. So the police has always been. You're sending dog whistles and bullhorns to white people that we're not going to defund the police because we're going to make sure your community stay safe. We're going to make sure those black predators and people like that stay safe. This is white supremacy. You're sending dog whistles because you're trying to gin up something that's there rallying around this war to keep people, because that's all we know. Fighting, police forces, fear. You should be scared. The Russians are coming. They taking over Ukraine. We're gonna make sure. We're gonna make sure they come here. Oh, we're not gonna take the police off. Oh, COVID is over. We failed at COVID. And then I'm sitting in there and I'm looking at this chambers, and that president sat up there speaking to lawmakers in the House of Representatives, the People's House, supposed to be the bastion of liberty, to speaking to lawmakers who were complicit with Donald Trump. And just a little over a year, 1/6/21, just over a year past that, you said nothing about a terrorist taking over. They took over the Capitol. See, we don't want the truth. And you say nothing about that event? Why? Because it was white people? But see, don't become you said nothing about Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, many of those. They were holding up your voting. They were you, Mr. President. They were trying to overturn your election based on a lie that Donald Trump sold to the point. Hear me. You talking about the police? No, okay. You just said nothing about the 5 police officers that got killed on that day. And you want to lecture me and talk to me about you care about? No, you care about the politics of the police because you know what base that's selling to. This was the most white supremacist speech I ever, because you say nothing. Why? We know why. Because it was white people who did it. And you don't want to talk about that because it's all about Ukraine now, because white people are getting killed and white people are dying. And when white people are getting killed and white people are dying and white people are terrorists, we be quiet about it. When they die and get killed, we yell about it. But when white people be terrorizing people, we be quiet about it. Talk Ted Cruz, just right there and did nothing. And many of them didn't even vote for the people who to get congressional medal of honors for their heroism that day.
Mm.
How can you, on the first State of the Union, after the terrorist attack, the insurrection, you don't even want to talk about it?
That's right.
You say nothing about your own capital, and the world is looking and say, you know what? Y'all have no moral authority. No, we have no moral authority at all. And it's like, it's just, what are the Capitol Hill police supposed to think? What are people supposed to think around the world? And you know what? I know what black people think. I guarantee you, if that had been black people done that, you'd have talked about Ukraine. And then the next thing you was hit about the black terrorists who stormed the Capitol. You would have you would have made sure you talked about that. But because it doesn't meet your agenda, we just gonna miss that historical event. I mean, how can you talk about the Civil War and don't talk about South Carolina where it first started?
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we I mean, so you said nothing about homelessness. You said nothing about school shootings. You said nothing about you put three. I work at a school. You put 4.4 million in Ukraine, and I haven't seen one dime. But every you cut that check so fast. But I haven't. You look at these schools. Only thing you get when a school shooting happen is thoughts and prayers.
Mm.
There's no metal
That's right.
detectors. There's no more police forces on schools. All you get is thoughts and prayers. Oh, but for Ukraine, you can send money. Why? Because you know what? That's the political. That's the political. You don't want to do it here in America because you
Mm-hmm.
know the gun rights advocates don't go for it. So it was one of the most. As I said, it was about a wasted hour of my life, theologically, morally, and it was just so openly white supremacist and racist to the fact that you still live in a country that if a black person says something about reparations, people are going to say get over it, but nobody's saying Ukraine to get over it. Zelensky is becoming a worldwide hero. What did he say? I don't need to ride, I need some guns. That's a meme now.
Mm-hmm.
And President Zelensky, he's becoming their George Washington, an international hero. Cause he's doing what? For me, he's doing what he should be doing. You should fight for your country. I mean, you did it.
Yeah.
That doesn't impress me. I mean, I mean, you should stand there now. By him being a president, okay, yeah, that's another level. But you should stand fight for your country. And so, I would just, um, it just for me, it's just Biden. It's just a white supremacist with a smile. It's just not crass. He's just gonna make you feel bad. Like Trump's gonna tell you, and it's gonna be crass about it, and it's gonna be mean spirited about it. But you know what? Don't. For me, it's worse to smile on my face, and I know you're like, it's nothing. And I quote, everybody who follows politics know the reason why you're in office is because of black women in South Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and you've done nothing. You've done nothing tangible. Don't tell me about Kamala Harris. Don't tell me about no Supreme Court nominee. You've done nothing tangible for black people. Yet these Democrats who want to have all these events and want to walk across bridges and want to vote blue no matter who are going to fall in line. Because you know what? He knows it doesn't matter. But I would tell him it matters to God. And again, to the people of Ukraine, God bless you. But as far as me as a person in this country, I am disappointed in my country because we have no moral authority to stand on anything. And I think about the people who have died in the world, in the wars that you and I've seen, Rwanda, and genocide is happening there, and we stand by and say we can do nothing. We stand by and say we can do nothing. Nobody is saying right now we can do nothing. What they're doing, they're on the phone, they're trying to get everybody to sanction, companies to sanction, to stand with Ukraine. But even with school shootings, I've seen tears, Parkland, Columbine, All I've seen is tears. See
Mm-hmm.
nothing tangible.
Yeah,
Because war is the Marine said, war is a racket.
it is.
That's what I want, and that was a journal. He said, war is a racket. That's what you seen. Biden's excited tonight because he's got his thing that he knows that America knows. War. But war is nothing but a racket. It is designed to get poor people killed and oligarchs richer.
Yep.
In a church, as we said last week, you have been complicit in the selling of fear. Because if the word of God's already told us what's going to happen. There's going to be wars and rumors of war. Nation should rise against nation. So,
Yep.
but you're saying it's the end of the world. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I would add is, God bless Ukraine. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I was in a conversation with someone about, well, do you support Ukraine? Well, of course I support Ukraine. Those people didn't invade Russia, right? They were invaded. I'm not. Of course I feel for the people of Ukraine. How could I not, as a Christian minister, how could I not feel for the suffering that is happening in Ukraine? With that, though, we have to balance the reality of our country. When big events like this happen, there's a moment of introspection where we can look at ourselves and we can see where we're at. These are like barometers. And we've got a ways to go. But we don't want to talk about any of that, right? We don't want to talk about the disparity in how we've treated people. And then I have a boss, or he's not my boss anymore, but I have a boss that just won't be honest of why it's different. He won't tell the American public why it's different. It's different because getting too involved could end the planet as we know it, right? We're talking about a fundamental environmental change that would change the face of the planet long after we're gone. So, yes, I do feel for the people of Ukraine. I also feel for the over 8,000 Russians in Russia who have been arrested for protesting this war. The Russian people are not the enemy. The Ukrainian people are not the enemy. Just like the American people are not the enemy. It's these systems that are propagated by these leaders. And it's, rich men start wars and poor people finish wars with their blood. And that's what we're seeing in Ukraine right now. No Russian oligarch is on the ground in Ukraine. Right? No, Joe Biden's not going to go to Ukraine. Right? Vladimir Putin's not going to go to Ukraine. Poor people are going to die. And it's just sad. It's just sad that when we look at these situations, because in reality, if we're being real, if you look at how we entered the war in Iraq, how are we any different than Russia going into Ukraine? Our intelligence falsified stuff. Said they had weapons of mass destruction. Putin said the same thing about Ukraine. That's why he's in there. That's how he sold it to his people. The same way Bush sold it and the CIA sold Iraq. And then we went over there and spilled blood in that country. Physically. Right? So, I think the biggest introspection for me is, yes, I stand with Ukraine, but I also understand that my country's history, we're a lot more like Russia than we are Ukraine.
Here's my hesitation with Ukraine. I talked to a lot of black people who have this hesitation. We want to support Ukraine, but we just gotta be honest. The optics was bad with the Africans not being released. Ukraine was doing that, not Russia.
Sure.
Why can't they leave? They're refugees. They didn't ask for that fight neither. They were there for whatever reason. And so now black people looking at hold on. Now, okay, our tax dollars. Biden's not cutting that check from his bank account at Frost Bank.
No.
It's not coming from the National Bank of America. It was
That's
from
right.
the taxpayers of America. Black people pay taxes too, and that's a bad look, Ukraine, because those are people from our heritage and background, and you're not letting them out. You're sending a bad message that white lives matter more than black lives. And that's not a good look. Get it together, Ukraine, because there's our military, our tech, or is multiracial. If we, it's just not white people going to come over and fight for you, Ukraine. It's going to be black, Hispanic, different. You need to wake up. That's a bad optics. That was a bad
Terrible
look.
optic.
And so now we got to look. Okay, now hold on. What are you doing? Because now you're sending a message that we think the same way of you. That's why I love talking about Link, because it shows they need to learn from, they need to grow from that. That is a bad look. No, because the American support is vast, it's diverse, it's huge. It's not white people, it's not black people, it's not brown people. It's all of us together.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to understand that we don't like that.
Right.
We're going to call you out on that. Russia's Russia. Russia don't nobody. Everybody hates that. But then you can't, we can't not look at that and say, well, we love Ukraine, we help Ukraine. Okay, and I call on Ukraine for what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Same way we had to deal with the administration when they was calling, in the media was calling Katrina victims refugees. No, they're American citizens.
That's right.
They're not refugees. Get it right. Get the language correct. Get the optics correct. Because you want support, then you need to understand that that was what's so frustrating about Vietnam veterans. Okay, you send me to Vietnam, you send me to World War II, but then I come back and I got to take my uniform off, serve in this country, because I get spit upon or worse, lynched.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good look. Because we all is supposed to the same country, and so that's the pushback. With a lot of Black American support for Ukraine is you have to get it right, and that is not a good look. You need to fix it. People need to be allowed to leave. Refugees and people who are fleeing the war, it should be based on the consent code. They need to be allowed to leave, just like anybody else. But also, then other countries won't stand. So that's the center of the issue. It's being exposed that white war, white refugees, white situations are different, and this has to be looked at and dealt with, because unlike COVID exposed the world because it did not care about all these other factors that people care about.
That's right.
COVID was not unconditional in its deadliness. See, we dealing with something now that presidents, governments can pick and choose, and this is where we get in trouble. And this is why the optics were bad. And Biden didn't say anything. I had a friend of mine, he didn't say anything about that. Biden, you have to talk about it. You have to tell the Ukrainian people, this is American citizenship. You need to do the right thing about all refugees, period.
Right.
Or we're going to hold you accountable. We will hold you accountable for that action. And to Russia, I would say this, Putin most likely is not going to win this thing. But here, when you're dealing with Putin, you better be careful with this. He is a dictator. He is not a president.
That's right.
He's a dictator. And that's a difference with a distinction, because he's a very dangerous person based on a human point of view, that if he loses there, then what's going to happen in Russia? He's still going to be in charge.
That's right.
You're dealing with a very unstable person. Dealing with a person. So I think we talked about America, what COVID should be exposed to it, and what this moment should be, instead of the John Wayne stuff needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because y'all John Wayne Christians, non-Christian, whatever, your mentality is going to get, I've seen some of just you better calm down because the war is one thing, but the peace is often more dangerous.
Yeah. And this,
Historians will tell you the North won the war, but the South won the peace.
right. Well, look
The
at
peace
look at Afghanistan.
Yeah,
Who won the peace?
Yes, but we talk with Putin. You're talking about nuclear power,
Right. So
which makes this whole and that's what we try to convey. Which makes this John Wayne's
better calm down.
And I hope Biden will have a bunch of John Waynes around him and NATO. John Wayne, we're trying to help. We're trying to be responsible to the rest of the world, and y'all church John Waynes too. Y'all nationalists, it's John Wayne. You better calm down this situation because this is an unstable situation. Even if my point is, if Putin pulls out tonight, they stop everything. Doesn't mean the situation is over.
No.
Because he's old. I mean, come on. Who's watching? And I guarantee it's things that y'all, the general public can't even imagine what's going on right now. We can't even really talk because we got to talk. We can't. You don't. Yeah, that stuff y'all see on CNN. That's just stuff It's so much going on right now. It's you couldn't even handle it. They couldn't handle it. I'm telling you, they could. You don't want to know.
So much.
What's happening right now with this situation?
Yep.
This is you don't want to know. And then I'll let you speak. I want you to comment on that. You had a sitting senator. I don't know if you caught this, but you might. Lindsey Graham from South Carolina went on public. Well, first of all, the dumb one from Florida, Rubio, was on the phone with Zelensky on a top secret conference with him, telling everybody about it. Lindsey Graham went out there and said, we need to kill Putin. The only way it's going to happen is somebody in Russia needs to kill. It's one thing for John Wayne, who had no power, to say that. Mm-hmm. Senators, you thwart missions like that. You mess things up. But a sitting senator saying that, calling for the head of a person that's in a sovereign nation. Well, no matter how you think about it, these are sovereign, calling for the head. I mean, it's this John Wayne mentality. This is a different situation.
And if you haven't read Jesus and John Wayne, you need to get on that because it really lays the roadmap to this level of arrogance, and it's almost like they don't understand just how dangerous this situation really is. Right? Nobody wins nuclear war. Ask the Japanese. Ask us.
Yes.
Nobody won that. When we made that decision and we dropped that bomb, nobody won. That's a horrific thing to do. And those are small by comparison to today's weapons. That's nothing. That weapon is nothing now. So, I would say this to the John Wayne Christians and the nationalists and the Lindsey Grahams of the world, you need to pump the brakes. Okay? Yeah. Because if the shoe were on the other foot, if someone called for the assassination... if a minister in Putin's cabinet called for Joe Biden's assassination, we would be furious. We would be furious, flailing all over the place. Oh, Russia's a terrorist state. Well, how are you any different when you do that? Regardless of how he got in office, the reality is he is the sovereign leader of a nuclear power. That we are inches away from we are one mistake away from getting into open conflict with Russia. One mistake, one miscalculation, one whoops, I dropped this bomb over the Polish border. All it takes is one. And then Article 5 gets enacted. So, and what kills me is a lot of these John Wayne Christians are older than me and would not get sent to fight. They'd sit back and watch our young men and women die in a war that could have been avoided. Yeah. So pump the brakes with this whole, we need a no-fly zone. We need to do what we're doing, and no more. We have reached the limit of what we can do with Russia. This is it. Because going beyond this creates the conditions, some of those conditions are already there, but it creates conditions for a world none of us are prepared to live in. And to be honest with you, I've studied these. I worked on these weapons for 21 years. I don't want to live through it. I hope it lands right on top of me because I don't want to live through what's coming after that. So you need to pump the brakes and maybe shut your mouth about killing heads of state and let this thing play out, right? Let the Ukrainians defend their country. Let Russia wants to expend their blood and treasure all over Ukraine. Let them do it. That may sound harsh, but that is reality. That's another thing we've forgotten to do in the church is be realists. We've got to be real about this situation. We've got to be honest about this situation. We've helped Ukraine to the limit. There's nothing more we can do. And honestly, by all accounts, they seem to be doing all right.
Yeah, they're doing fine. Yeah, and what I would say is, and bringing home as we get ready to close, and to bringing home, we need to look at our personal situation. We need to look at you better. And I'm talking about evaluating myself, and I don't have time. Look at the gas prices. Look at these things. Look at what's going on. You better learn how to prep yourself for. I'm reminded of Joseph. I'm reminded of when Joseph was put in charge, and was made, but he was put in charge because 7 years of famine and 7 years of good times are going to come, and because what Joseph did, he saved the lives. You better prep for you and your family, because the lights might go off, the gas might become untenable to even purchase. This situation is nothing to play with. Yeah. And this is what is so frustrating with these politicians. Y'all love to play politics with everything. You played it with COVID, and look what it done. You play it again, it could be just as deadly. But you as individuals, as believers and human beings, you better prep your family. You better get food stores. This is our duty as ministers of the gospel. Talk about all this we want to. I center it on humanity. I care about humanity.
Yeah.
Hunger, doesn't matter if you're black or white or Republican, conservative, Democrat. If you got whatever you got behind that, shelter is needed. And so you need to make sure that you can survive. You better get you some bread and some water and stores that you can survive, because you never know when this thing can get cut off.
Yeah, you can't eat toilet paper.
You never know. You better get prep. You better get prepped. While all y'all talking about the end times, we talking about that's beyond your control. What is it saying? He said, quit worrying about things beyond your control. We don't control the end times, but you're living now. And you better get yourself and your family in position where you can survive weeks, several days, without being able to go to the store to get water. Price of gas too high. You can't even. You better get there. You better wake up. We love to look at Ukraine and all this stuff happening there. Hey, you know what? We're not immune. We're not off limits. We talk about you better start prepping yourself for when you can't go to the luxuries that we just take for granted, and they're always going to be here. No, one day they can get cut off. One day you might not be able to go to H-E-B and get that bread. One day you might not be able to go get the water. You better stop up, and it's called prep. This is not fear. This is preparation. Fear mongering is the end times. You have no control because these people don't want to deal with the situation. We saying, you know what? You better prep yourself and get ready, because we're in. We need to pray, God, untie this knot. Yep. This is a knot. This is a knot. And if men and politicians and people like that try to untie it, people are gonna die.
Yep. And here's your pro tip. You need to get bottled water. Right? You need to have. I think regardless of what's going on in the world, you should always have bottled water in the house, because you just never know. 1 day, 2 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. It could happen. Water mains burst all the time. But clean water, canned food that you do not need heat to cook. It kills me when I go to these grocery stores when calamity strikes. They're going for toilet paper and fresh meat. Okay. What are you going to do when the power goes out? You can't eat the toilet paper. You can't eat spoiled meat. It'll kill you. You need to be thinking a little bit farther ahead, you know. So one of the things we do, we go to Costco. We have our list of stuff that we buy. And then we have about 50 or $100 every time we go. And we just buy canned food. Right? Because a day may come when, even if it's just a 3-week snowstorm, you know, we don't need to leave the house. Even if it's just because gas gets to $10 a gallon and it just makes more sense to eat the pork and beans at home. Right? Instead of trying to go out and get food, it's not cost effective to use the car. Right? You got to be prepared. That's not fear. That's reality. And if you don't think gas can't get to $6-7 a gallon down here in Texas, give it a month. Give it a month without Russian oil, because we blocked them. We've sanctioned them. You know, but here's what I don't want to hear, and I'll close with this. Don't tell me about your persecution at your $6 at the pump.
No.
That is such an arrogant, $6 at the pump, woe is me. People are dying all over the world. Ukraine, Rwanda, people are dying for real reasons. And because you can't get your Starbucks, you gotta use your Starbucks money to get some gas.
Mm-hmm.
Miss me. I don't want to hear about your persecution. Don't come talk to me about it's the end of the world because I got to pay extra at the pump. How much do you think a Ukrainian right now would kill just to have a gallon of gas to run a generator right now? Right? So come on, just miss me with all that. You know, you're being ridiculous. Buy canned food. Don't buy all the toilet paper. Don't buy the fresh meat. You know, you need to be able to do things without heat.
I wonder, do people realize, when they turn their light switch on, don't they know the government can turn your light switch off? It doesn't matter how much you push that switch, it won't come home.
Yeah.
The government can take over our power system.
Absolutely can.
The water system can get contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna drink it anyway. See, this is very serious. And when we look at these people, we need to look at these things as warnings. And are you prepared for the worst? Are you prepared for? But the great point you just made, we're so spoiled. It's Americans because we have never been through this and never understood. And COVID came, and look how we handled that. We failed at that. Hopefully, we don't fail at this, but we walking out there, we might fail at this because we're so spoiled. We're so, we got our sports and all this stuff. You know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You might start rationing things.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to handle it, but thank God for these 2 episodes, and we're gonna take a couple of weeks break here as we recharge the batteries. We're gonna come back with a book review. We're excited about Shouting in the Fire by Dante Stewart.
Yeah.
And it'll be 3 weeks from now, and we'll be back on Bishop Brothers. But we just hope you got some out for these 2 weeks. Don't live in fear. Also make sure you stand on the side of truth and justice all the time, no matter who is on what side. You stand on God's side. But most of all, we're praying for human beings around the world that are suffering.
That's right.
In Ukraine, here in the United States of America, and that's what we can't forget about our country, the issues we got here. And please don't forget about the people who are still suffering with COVID and the long-term effect of COVID. Based on that showed up last week, COVID is still here.
That's right.
Not going anywhere. But we thank God for being with us this last couple of weeks, and we just pray for that this war cease and it comes to a conclusion that many people don't die. Yeah. Necessary. It's not necessary for one to die because it's from man, but we just praying that it stops.
Yep. It's important to remember there's a lot of Russian, Ukrainian, other people. They're never going to see their son again. They're never going to see their daughter again. And that's why I don't want to hear about your $6 at the pump. People are losing their children left and right now. So have a little perspective and be thankful for what you do have. So until next time.
All right, see you.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Bishop Brothers. Make sure to visit our page, Bishop Brothers, where you can like and follow so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, please tell a friend about the show. The brothers salute you. Until we meet again, Godspeed.